Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Week 6 of Major League Baseball Power Rankings. First and foremost, Happy Mother's Day to all mothers out there. It's a wonderful day, it's a time for celebration, and every single mother out there deserves to be honored and recognized for Mother's Day. So, Happy Mother's Day! Okay, getting into things here. We've had a nice week of games. You've had a bunch of teams going 5-1, 6-1, things of that nature. You had one team getting absolutely swept this week, going 0-5. Other interesting thing we had this week is there are 7 teams that did not move at all this week, and the largest jump was a drop of 8 by one team, and we'll get into that. The thing I like about this is now that we are at the quarter mark here, 2 things that you'll notice. 6 weeks into the season, you will see that it will take more to move up and down the board than in prior weeks, because now you have all that history of the first quarter of the season, and each week that goes forward, you have that many more games that the points are based upon, which means that a strong or a weak week has less and less impact on the overall power of the team for the season. The cumulative points mean it's going to take consistency over a longer period of time, more weeks to move up and down. And that's really what you want to see out of your higher caliber teams. So if you look at the field when the playoffs come around, you get 5 teams from each league. There are 3 division winners and 2 wild cards. So you got 10 teams potentially that will be going to the playoffs, and therefore it's most likely your top row here will either be all 10 playoff teams or most of them. Is it possible that because of the way the season structure, where you're giving favoritism to a team that wins their division, but the division is weak, so that you have teams that are technically in the top 10, but because they're in the same division as other teams that are also very strong, they could be in the top 10 but miss the playoffs, and have teams that are not in the top 10 and make the playoffs. It's very interesting that way. At the same time, having said that about the top 10, the bottom 10 here are all going to be teams that are rebuilding and are trying to build depth and trying to get experience and all those things. These are teams that are probably not going to make the playoffs, or probably a long shot for the playoffs, and at this point are just rebuilding, need experience, need to make some changes here. They are most likely at the quarter mark not getting the playoffs. And as you go through this list, you'll be like, yep, no way. No way. That one, yet no way. Up here, you're like, they could very well be there, but you don't know. Because while they're in the top 10 at the quarter mark, has no way indication that they're going to make the playoffs at the end of the year. You've got 3/4 of the season to go. That is over 100 games left to go. So this is an excellent indication. The quarter mark is definitely a great place to put a benchmark for the playoff run. Because not only that, but you've also played a lot of games against your own division. And division games are the most important in the season. Yes, you play 162, but you're going to be playing 6 or 7 against your own league, and maybe a few against, maybe a dozen for the whole season against the other league. You're playing 18, 19 games against each team in your division. So with weak divisions, like, for example, and you can feel free to debate this as you wish, the American League Central is generally not the strongest division compared to the West or the East. Therefore, you've got teams like Minnesota and Cleveland beating up on Kansas City, Detroit, and the like. Therefore, because you're playing so many games against weaker teams, it pads your stats and makes it easier to clinch. Does not necessarily mean that you're a stronger team. Okay, so having gotten into all that, let's go ahead and get started here, shall we? Number 30, the Miami Marlins, same spot as last week. The Miami Marlins have Congratulations to them. They finally hit double-digit wins, getting to the 10-win mark on the season, being 10-29. Having gone 1 win and 6 losses against the Chicago Cubs and Miami Mets, or the New York Mets, they finally break into double digits with that single win, gets them into number 10 wins for the season. This is a team that you knew wasn't going to go far this year. They are in rebuilding. They're trying to bring in prospects. They've fire-saled everybody that was of caliber. Your Christian Yelich, your Giancarlo Stanton, all those players gone. Now you've got a whole bunch of rookies and potential in their farm system they're trying to build up. They're going to be riding some bad years. Can they do well? Anything is possible, but I foresee that they're going to have a tough climb getting out of the cellar of their league, especially considering the fact that they've got only 10 wins on the season. The next up is 13 wins, which would be number 29, the Baltimore Orioles, who again also did not move at all this week. Baltimore went 0-5. They had the worst week of any team in the majors, having been the only team to get completely swept. Granted, they played Boston and LA, and Boston is on fire right now, which you knew they would eventually get on fire. And LA is no slouch either. They have their teams in which they do well and some they don't do well historically speaking, but both Boston and LA played Baltimore and swept them. So they are 3 games above my Marlins for the cellar. But again, they also went through a massive fire sale last year. They're rebuilding, and unfortunately, the players like Scope, who are of decent caliber, are stuck in a team that just outright sucks. They're rookies, they're inexperienced, they are rebuilding, and it's hard for Baltimore fans to see that. Unfortunately, the nature of the beast is when you are giving up on a season like they did last year and you get rid of all your players, you know that's going to carry over to the next season. Who knows if they'll be able to turn that around in the next year or two, but for the time being, at the quarter mark, they are at 29. Coming in at 28, the Detroit Tigers also did not move from last week. They are at 17-20 on the season. They also had a bad week, going 2 wins and 4 losses against the LA Angels and the Minnesota Twins. Having played Minnesota, Minnesota being at the top of their division is sort of a benchmark for any team that is either challenging for the top of the division or division leaders from other divisions. In your own division, that's how you climb up. You play the teams you're chasing and you beat them. Detroit didn't do that. So they stay at the same spot at 28 this week. Coming in at 27, the Kansas City Royals. Kansas City also in the same spot as last week, having also gone 2 wins and 4 losses against the Houston Astros and the Philadelphia Phillies, are 1 game better than Baltimore, sitting at Kansas City, sitting at 14 wins. Now, you might ask, well, the Detroit Tigers has 17 wins, but Kansas City has 14 wins. Why is Kansas City sitting higher? Because when you lose in overtime, you still get lost on your record, but you get that 1 point. Remember, the point system here is 3 wins for a 9-inning win, 0 points for a 9-inning loss, and when you go to overtime and extra innings, you take that 3 points that you would have gotten as a win and you split them between both teams. They both get a cut, so that the team that pushed you to extra innings but still walks away with a point, and the team that prevailed, because they won the game, they get the 2 points there. That's how that shakes out to be, that you would have a team that would have fewer wins than a lower ranking team, but would still rank higher, because fundamentally they got the extra 2 points, the extra individual points from some extra inning games they've played. That would give them more points than a team that just straight up won or lost. So sure, they have 3 more wins than Kansas City, but some of their losses they got an extra inning point out of, so they got to be higher in point total here. And this will come into play later on as we get up to these up here because you've got some more ties and points, and we'll get into where the record is versus and why they're up ranked as they are. Coming in at 26, the San Francisco Giants also did not move this week. San Francisco is at 16 wins, 23 losses. They went 2-4 on the week, having played the Colorado Rockies and the Cincinnati Reds. This is a team in which has aging veterans. They're already trying to shop Bumgarner around, but you've got a player like Posey, Bumgarner, and others who are past their prime. They have some younger talent there that still need to get some experience. Overall, they are a shell of the team that they used to be. Some of the same names are still there, but they're nowhere near as good as they used to be. So you got a team here that is looking for ways to bring in the talent that's going to help them win some games and be competitive within their own division. They've been to the World Series. They know what it's like, what that tastes like. Now they want to get back there. But the talent that got them there either has left or are over on the back end of their careers. So they are 26 this week. At 25, you've got the Toronto Blue Jays, which are down 4 from last week. After going through 5 teams that did not move at all this past week and were basically jockeying for who was the worst, now you've got a team that has moved, but they moved downward. I remember last week speaking about how Vladimir Guerrero's son came up and helped them win that one game. He hasn't had that kind of impact since then, and I'm really not surprised. He is a rookie. He might be the son of a Hall of Famer, but he still has to make his own mark. And in this past week, the Toronto Blue Jays went 1 win and 5 losses against Minnesota and the Chicago White Sox. So they are down 4 from last week, sitting at 16 wins and 23 losses. They have some nice pieces, but the pieces in the club are nice for what they'll do in the future. They need to get some experience under the hat of some of these players to be able to be more competitive. Because when you're playing in a division with Boston, Tampa, and New York, good luck. Just good luck. I remember a few years ago, they made this massive deal to bring in all these players from other teams that were big names, the Josh Donaldsons and others, and it may have helped them make a playoff run, but did not help them go deep. And then since then, all those players have either slumped off or moved on. So, it's about bringing in the right players for your team to make that team successful. They have some nice pieces, but are those pieces ready to gel? Are they showing the team chemistry they need? Not yet. Coming in at 24, the Washington Nationals. The Washington Nationals are down 1 from last week, having had a dreadful week. Besides Baltimore, this is the only other team that has finished in this row at 5. They went 2-5 on the week. They got 5 losses, whereas other teams here have gone 2-4. They tacked on an extra loss. Way to go, Washington. Having played the Milwaukee Brewers and the Los Angeles Dodgers, I'm not entirely surprised. I've always felt that they were kind of a middle-range team, but this week they have fallen down to the bottom row here, having had a bad week. We'll see if they can rebound, but in the meantime, for this week, they are at 24 with 48 points. Coming at 23, the Chicago White Sox are up 2 from last week. They were down here, but they moved up, coming off of a 3-4 week. Not a stellar week, but 3 wins is still 3 wins. Is still better than these teams here have all finished with their 2 or fewer wins. So having gone 3 wins and 4 losses against the Cleveland Indians and the Toronto Blue Jays, they rise up 2 spots just because the rest of the board here has had poorer weeks than they did. Now, I've heard comments from fans of the Chicago White Sox that a lot of the media are biased against them, and I get that, and they do have some pieces that I think are potentially all-stars. Having said that, this is completely objective analytical approach in which it's based upon the points. First and foremost, second of all, against run differential. And based upon their performance on how they've done this season to date, you're looking at a team that is 17-21. They're 4 games under 500, and then they went and had a 3-4 week, an under 500 week. So that explains why they are on the bottom row for this week. Now, if they start winning games and start having good weeks and start building upon that, they can definitely rise up. But they haven't shown it yet. So, coming in at 22 is the Pittsburgh Pirates. Now, both Pittsburgh and the next team here have both got the same number of points at 53. However, the Pittsburgh Pirates have gotten beat up a little bit more, having given up 11 more runs than they scored during this week. Run differentials are always for that week, so they can provide a differential and a tiebreaker for teams that have the same number of cumulative points for the whole season. Pittsburgh is up 2, and they are 2 over 500 at 19-17, having gone 4-2 this week against the Texas Rangers and the St. Louis Cardinals. Now, going 4-2 is what you want to do, especially when you're playing divisional games. You're going to play almost half your season against your division rivals. Pittsburgh did not play their division rival against Texas, but did against St. Louis, and they won 2 out of 3 respectively for the whole week against those two teams. And that's what you want to do if you want to rise in power rankings, rise in your division, and compete for a spot in the playoffs. You've got to be consistent with getting 2 out of 3. And if you listen to analysts, if you listen to players, if you listen to managers, they always say 2 out of 3, 2 out of 3, 2 out of 3. Because you got to figure, if you're winning 2 out of 3 of every series of the entire year, you are guaranteed a playoff spot, and you are in the running for home field advantage for some of those playoff spots. So that's what you want to do any given week. And Pittsburgh did that this week, going 4-2. It's up to them to keep up the pace and to maintain that consistency. But this week, they are up 2 for doing that. Coming in at number 21. Now, I realize that Colorado got a worse record than the Pittsburgh Pirates. Totally get that. Colorado coming in at 18-21 versus the Pittsburgh Pirates being 19-17. Pittsburgh has a better overall record. So, why are they here? Because with the overtime losses that the Colorado Rockies have ranked up, they managed to get the same number of point total as the Pittsburgh Pirates, who have a better overall record. But having said that, their run differential for this week, they scored 1 more run than they gave up, while Pittsburgh gave up more runs than they scored. Knowing that these teams are in opposite directions, could you very well see Pittsburgh rise while Colorado falls next week? Sure. But for this week, the extra inning losses pays dividends, because you now have a team in Colorado that has more overtime losses, giving them that extra individual point, allowing them to tie the Pittsburgh Pirates in overall points for the season, despite the fact that Pittsburgh has now won 2 games more than Colorado, which would give them theoretically 6 points more than Colorado if all things were even. But those extra inning losses help them to look better than they're performing. Colorado is up 1 from last week, having won 3 and lost 2 against the San Francisco Giants and the San Diego Padres. Playing divisional games, as I hammer this home all the time, 2 out of 3. They played 5 games and they had a slightly above 500 record against them. I'll take it. For the Colorado fans, you definitely want better than 500 for the week. It's not ideal, but you're up 1 at 18-21 on the season, so you want to build upon that, and hopefully you can get out of the cellar of the final third, of the bottom third here. These teams here, based upon 1/4 of the season, are unlikely to make the playoffs, and none of them had significant rises or climbs. So it shows that through 6 weeks of performance on the field, games played, these teams are fighting to get their players experience, fighting to get the right players in there, getting chemistry together, getting whatever it is they need to be more competitive within their divisions, within the league, within the game. So there's your bottom third. Now, this is the middle third is where things get interesting. These are teams that are jockeying either to get into the top 10 or avoid the cellar. And starting off that row are the Texas Rangers at number 20, coming in at 54 points, just one above Pittsburgh and Colorado. It allows them to sit by themselves in the middle row, albeit at the end. The Texas Rangers are down 5 from last week, so they've been in the middle row here, but their performance this week, having lost 2 and won 4, or 1-2 and lost 4 against the Pittsburgh Pirates and the Houston Astros, dropped them 5. 5 is the second largest fall of any team on the whole board. And if you look at the first couple of weeks of the season, they were major swings, 10 plus in the first week. And even last week, you had a team move by 10. So 5 being the second largest move of any team on the board shows that it's starting to level out there. So having gone 2 and 4, they did the exact opposite of what you want to do, especially having played division rival the Houston Astros. Granted, Houston is definitely a deeper team than Texas is this year, but who's surprised by that? It's Houston, you know? So they start off the middle row at number 20. Coming at 19, the New York Mets are down 1 from last week, sitting at 19 and 20 on the season. They had an extremely average week, going 3 and 3 against the San Diego Padres and the Miami Marlins. I'm not entirely surprised because they do have some key pieces on the IL, and they did play both a stronger team in San Diego and a very weak team in Miami. So, you know, I think when they get some players back and players start clicking better, they're going to be more competitive than they are now. I definitely have them pegged for a team that's going to challenge for the division. But so far, the pieces haven't really clicked all that well, and they're sitting at 19 for this week. It'll be interesting to see how DeGrom and Syndergaard do when they get healthy and when they start clicking. When you have 2 out of 5 of your rotation pieces, or even 3 or 4 out of your rotation, really competing for who can do better, then you have some fun games. In the meantime, they're at 19. Coming in at number 18, the Seattle Mariners. They are down 4 this week, and seeing them become increasingly humbled as they go through the season is no surprise to anybody. The fact that they started the season off at number 1, that was a surprise. And the fact that they stayed there for a couple of weeks showed great acumen to them for being able to hang in there. Unfortunately, it's a long, long season, and I'm sure it does not surprise too people to see them starting to fall down to earth. They are down 4 this week, and they are 2 games under 500 at 20 and 22. They had a dreadful week, going 2 wins and 5 losses against the New York Yankees and Boston Red Sox. Think about it. They took an East Coast trip through New York and Boston, and you want to win? You need a better team than the Seattle Mariners got to do that. You're talking about something for an East Coast team. Anybody from the West Coast, whether it's LA, Seattle, etc., Arizona, anybody from the West going into the East Coast and trying to win against those teams in their homes, good luck. So they had the excuse of that road trip, but you still have to win your games, and they did not win their games this week. So they're down to number 18. And speaking of starting off the season strong, the Oakland A's have 17. The A's are up 2 from last week at 19 and 22 on the week. The Oakland A's went 4 wins and 2 losses against Cincinnati and Cleveland. They did not have the same rough road trip that Seattle did, and they shined 4, winning 4 and losing 2. However, unlike Seattle, they fell off the top ranks sooner, and so they've been sort of peddling water or treading water in the middle ranks here, and they're probably going to end up somewhere in the middle at the end of the season, just because the bottom of the division or the league is that much worse, and they don't have the depth to hit the top 10 over the long term. So they're probably going to be in the middle ranks here most of the season, but that also remains to be seen. They have been there lately at 17. Coming in at 16, you've now seen, with the LA Angels coming at 16, the same division in all 3 spots in consecutive rounds. So you're now showing that you're the whole American League West here, minus Houston, are very average teams. That benefits them because it allows them to shake off bad games. It plays a lot of games against each other. And when it comes to time to play Houston, you only have one team to go through trying and get the division. Plus, you have the potential for the wild cards going on there. And with all of them bunched together against the entire league and all in the same place like that, it shows that they are within their division well matched and even, which will make those West Coast games pretty interesting. And it'll also be interesting to see who goes in to the West Coast, fares well, and who does not fare well. The Angels this week have gone 4 wins and 2 losses against the Detroit Tigers and the Baltimore Orioles. So they got the benefit of beating up on some bad teams. Every team's going to go in against bad teams and go in against good teams. It's how you handle those games. Do you win them or do you lose them? The LA Angels this week happen to benefit from playing bad teams, going 4-2. So we'll see how that pans out for them throughout the course of the season. But at the quarter mark, they are at 16. Coming in at 15, your Cincinnati Reds. They are up 2 from last week, having gone Cincinnati 4 wins and 3 losses against the Oakland Athletics and the San Francisco Giants. They have 18-22 on the season, and they are treading water at literally the middle rank of the entire league. I doubt you're going to see much in ESPN or MLB about the middle row. You definitely won't hear anything about the bottom row because they only like to talk about the top row, which we will get into that as we get there. But the Cincinnati Reds have some strong pieces. It's just a matter of putting it together, and right now, being middle of the pack is exactly where they should be. They're having some good weeks. They're having some bad weeks. This, they're 4-3. So they do rise a couple, but they're probably not going to move much past the middle 10. Coming in at number 14, the Atlanta Braves. They are down 1 from last week, and they are exactly 500 at 20-20, and had an exactly 500 week, going 3-3 against the Los Angeles Dodgers and the Arizona Diamondbacks. What I do give them credit for is the fact that they went through 2 teams in the Dodgers and the Diamondbacks who are having stronger seasons than they are. Having not even seen those 2 teams yet, obviously they're ranked higher. So they managed to break even against a rough week for them, against tougher teams. Whether or not you consider that a sign of strength, the fact that they held their own, or a sign of weakness because they had a very average week, that's up to you to decide. Feel free to leave your comments in the section below and let me know what you think. In the meantime, moving right along, number 13 are the Boston Red Sox. Boston, having had a very strong week, one of the best weeks of anybody, going at 5 wins and 1 losses, the Giant has awoken. And they went and played Baltimore and Seattle. Granted, not strong teams, but they needed somebody to start rebounding off of and started building their acumen. And being at 2 games over 500 at 21-19, they're up 3 from last week. With the powerhouse that the Red Sox are, the fact that they were ever down here in the first place was just a phantom. You knew they weren't going to stay down there, and they're definitely, through the consistency of winning games week after week after week, they are slowly climbing up. I'm expecting to see them in the top 10 in the not too distant future. I would be surprised if they haven't broken the top 10 by the All-Star break. So they are doing very, very well, and they have a run differential of positive 25. They are slaughtering teams. Granted, it is only Baltimore, Seattle, but they are seriously showing their strength against teams they're supposed to beat. And that is how they actually beat New York, both in the division series and in the division leader, by beating up on teams you're supposed to win. Whereas the Atlanta Braves are struggled at minus 12 run differential. Coming in at number 12, the Cleveland Indians. They are down 1 this week, and they are at 2 games over 500, 20-18, having won 2 games and lost 5 this week against the Chicago White Sox and the Oakland Athletics. They frankly had a very disappointing week. You would think that between Trevor Bauer, Terry Francona, granted Kluber on the IL, I give him that, but that's one pitcher out of a whole week, and most are going to pitch twice in a week. I mean, what are they doing the rest of the week, you know? They are down 1, and I expect more out of the Indians. They with the way they're able to compete for the division and the way they're playing weaker teams in their division, they really should be taking better advantage of that, and they just haven't been. Maybe they're a sleeping giant. That remains to be seen. But they are still at number 12, so among other potential sleepers, they are doing better so far than other teams. And they actually did make it into the top 10. So you know they have the ability to. It's just a matter of putting it together at the right time. And the later in the season you do that, the better. Because, well, hopefully you're not too far down when you're doing that, but you get the idea. Coming in at number 11, the Arizona Diamondbacks. They made the single largest drop of any team this week, falling 8. They got humbled. Not significantly like an 0-5 or a 1-5, but they did the opposite of what you want to do if you're trying to win your division. They went 2 wins and 4 losses. They dropped 2 out of 3 for the week, playing Tampa Bay Rays and the Atlanta Braves. You're playing teams that, while Tampa may be doing well this year, so far, the Atlanta Braves are treading water, and they fail to capitalize on those games. They are still sitting at 4 over 500 at 22-18, but they had a significant fall because of their week. Granted, a 2-4 week would normally drop you that much, but the reality of the matter is that you need to have consistency over the course of a season, and their overall points were not enough to get them in the top 10. So they ran out your middle 10. These are teams in which I suspect a couple of these might make the playoffs just simply because of the way the playoff structure is made, because they're in the same division in a stronger division, and more teams from that division make the playoffs. So that rounds out your middle 3, your middle third, and these are the teams that I think are going to be interesting to see. Can they rise? Can they fall? That will make life interesting for everyone else in the league. Now, the all-important top 10. This is the one that everyone loves. This is when you look on YouTube for top 10s, it's always top this, top this, top this, always in the nice round 10. And when you look at ESPN, MLB, they're always talking about the top 10. They don't like going into wasting time on these teams here. I like going over everybody. Baseball is fun. So, starting off this week's top 10 is the St. Louis Cardinals. St. Louis is down 5, having had a bad week, winning 2 games and losing 5 to the Philadelphia Phillies and the Pittsburgh Pirates. But they are still 4 games over 500 at 22-18. This is what happens when you have had a strong performance and then you have a really bad week, a strong season and a bad week. You fall, but you don't fall tremendously. Like I mentioned before, when talking about the Texas Rangers, they only fell 5 despite having a bad week. That is the second largest jump up anybody, and the only other team to drop 5 were the St. Louis Cardinals. So they are still remaining competitive. They can still come back, but they had a bad week, and they paid for it by falling 5. Coming in at number 9, the Chicago Cubs. They are up 3. They break back into the top 10, having had a 5-win, 2-loss week against the Miami Marlins and the Milwaukee Brewers. The fact that they were playing the Miami's almost give-me games against the top 10 here. But when you go in against Milwaukee and you continue to win, that shows on a points basis, regardless of what fans may think of the way they play the games, they're winning games, which gets you the points, which gets you ranked, and gives you an objective positioning against the rest of the league. So they come in at number 9. Coming in at number 8, the San Diego Padres. And I would not be surprised to see them in the top 10 all year long. They started off well, and they've been elevating their game since then. Having said that, they went 4 wins and 2 losses against the New York Mets and division rival Colorado Rockies. They are sitting at 4 over 500 at 22-18, and they rise 2. So last week they were at 10, and then they managed to take a good week and bring them a little bit higher to number 8. Coming in at number 7, the Philadelphia Phillies. This is a team that, like San Diego, they loaded up, although they loaded up a lot more with Remuto, with Clutchin, with everybody else, with Harper. They definitely loaded up this all season, and so I would be surprised to see them fall out of top 10. This team is definitely a contender for the division, and they are in the exact same spot as last week at number 7. Having gone 4 wins and 2 losses against the St. Louis Cardinals and Kansas City Royals, they didn't have any divisional games this week, but they did what you're supposed to do. They got their 2 out of 3 for the week, being 4 and 2. Whether or not they got 2 out of 3 from one team or the other, or they swept and lost, it doesn't matter. For the week, you got 4 wins and 2 losses. A successful campaign for the week, and they are showing that they deserve to be in the top 10. Speaking of top 10, number 6, the Milwaukee Brewers. Made headlines early in the season with Christian Yelich, but he's only one player. The team as a whole is performing well, and they were tied with a few other teams for the best record. Well, there was one 6-1 team. We'll get into those, but there were multiple teams with 5 wins and 1 losses, and Milwaukee Brewers were one of them. Having gone against the Chicago Cubs and the Washington Nationals, they played a good team. They played a poor team, and they did their job. They did well, winning 5, losing 1. It allows them to climb 3 from last week. This is a team that is going to be interesting between Chicago and Milwaukee, and even St. Louis in there to see who wins the division. All 3 teams are playing well. All 3 teams are in the top 10. So Milwaukee, having finished off the first 4th of the season, the best of their division for power ranking purposes here. Good job. Now, let's get into the all-important top 5. These are your powerhouse teams. You got teams here that are going to be competing not just for the division, but for home field advantage, for all the perks that come with being powerhouse teams. These are teams that everyone else is going to be measuring up against. Where do they stand in the league? Where do they stand in their division? Can they play these teams and win, or is it see you next year? And rounding off the top 5 are the New York Yankees. Before I hear from the haters, they had a great week, going 5 wins and 2 losses. And while there were teams that went 5 wins and 1 loss, they were already in the top 10 from last week. They're winning games. They are, today aside, 7 games over 500, 23-16. They are up 1 from last week, having taken 3 out of 4 from the Seattle Mariners and gone in a split against the Tampa Bay Rays Friday and Saturday, 1-1 each. Coming in at number 4. No surprise, they're the top 5. Maybe a little bit of surprise they're only at 4, but the Houston Astros had a phenomenal week. They got the gold star for the best week of anybody, having gone 6 wins and 1 loss. Granted, against the 5-1 week teams, they got the benefit of playing that extra 7th game, but they won that game. And that's how you win championships. You win games. Houston Astros are 10 games over 500, having played the Kansas City Royals and the Texas Rangers. They up 4 spots. They are screaming a powerhouse. Despite players going on the IL, they are winning games. They are tearing it up. They are 19 runs over what they've given up during this past week. They come in number 4. And tied on points, number 3, the Minnesota Twins actually outrank the Houston Astros. Twins fans are cheering and celebrating. Raise the roof, raise the roof. They have ousted. They're above New York, Minnesota, Houston, Philly, San Diego. They are rocking and rolling. They're up 1 from last week. They are 12 games over 500, and they also had a 5-win, 1-loss week playing the Toronto Blue Jays and the Detroit Tigers. They went in against bad teams and beat them up. That's what you do. That's how you win your division. That's how you contend for the playoffs. And as you can see from the rest of your division here, being down here at the Indians, the Kansas City, Detroit, you've got a weak division, and they're capitalizing on it. Whether they play their division or not, they're capitalizing on it. They're having a darn good season at the mark. Coming in at number 2, the Tampa Bay Rays. Despite having gone 1-1 against New York this week, they have not moved from last week because they continue to dominate. The Tampa Bay Rays won 3, lost 2 against the Arizona Diamondbacks and the New York Yankees. So basically, they went 2 out of 3 against Arizona and 1-1 against New York. They stay in the same spot. They are 10 games over 500. Why is it that these two teams who are well over 10 games are lower than Tampa Bay? Because based upon points, and when it comes to extra inning games, they're getting that 1 point, whereas the other teams maybe not even making it to the overtime. They're just getting zeros for the games they've lost, while they're getting points for the games they've lost. Coming in at number 1, the Los Angeles Dodgers once again round out the entire power rankings at number 1. The Los Angeles Dodgers stay there from last week. They are also 10 games over 500 at 26-16, having won 4 and lost 3. Do they have a fairly average week playing the Atlanta Braves and the Washington Nationals? Yes, but they've also built up quite a stake. At 79 points, they are far and above better than anybody else in the league, and that affords them the ability to keep their crown at number 1, their crown, and despite having an average week. Now, granted, with the powerhouses you have in the top 10, that's only going to hold up for so long. If they go on a streak of or a trend of average weeks, they're not going to stay there. And I've got my money on a few of these teams dethroning them in the second quarter of the season. But for the time being, that is your power rankings for Sunday, May 12th. Happy Mother's Day, everybody. If you just happen to be browsing the web, browsing YouTube, and happen upon this video, please feel free to hit the like and subscribe. We thank everyone for watching the video. And I would love to hear your thoughts and opinions on any of these teams, their week, their performances, how points are done, where you think they should be, how they've done against your division, anything you like. I would love to hear your feedback, help me make better videos, and help me keep going with this channel. So enjoy. I love to hear your debate, your banter, your feedback. And until next week, thank you for watching.